Here come the boys. Y'all ready to go swimming, baby? Come on. Give it up. Get out of that water. I tried telling y'all, it's swim lessons, baby.
Thank you so much, Paul, for doing this. I greatly appreciate it. Good to see you.
You too, Dallas. And a couple of things to start. Thank you for coming to Canterbury Park.
Yeah.
The place is very deeply rooted in my heart. Brought me to Minnesota in 1995. My son Derek works here, as you have met.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool that you accommodated that way. Secondly, this intimate setting we have here at this little restaurant area at Canterbury Park.
It's awesome.
I mean, we're like metaphorically dining together and looking deeply into each other's eyes. So I'm just get myself good with that. And thirdly, with the Kansas City Chiefs in town this weekend and the 2 rings that Patrick Mahomes has, I'm sure you're quite excited for that.
Yeah, but I truly am. The reason I made this trip, and I really wanted to see you and Coach Dalma Gibson. I mean, the Chiefs game is just a bonus for me. But this past summer, when I hit you up on Twitter, I was doing a kind of a little spot at Chippewa Downs, doing some announcing. I hit you up on Twitter.
Well, that's right.
And kudos to you.
That was sweet.
For being an OG and being like, hey, man, here's some tips. Here's my number. Let's chat. And that was awesome, man. That is truly, that
right on.
Might have changed my life. So I appreciate that for you. No, I'm serious.
Well, you're very nice. I appreciate that. To whom much is given, much is expected. And you would imagine doing racetrack announcing, the K-Fan show, calling Vikings games and stuff like that. You know, I get pinged or tagged a fair amount to do a fair amount. And you know, outside of my jobs, I will do a lot of things, including meeting with people like you and just chatting about the construction of a dream. Yeah. But what bit me with what I saw with you and Chippewa Downs on Twitter was just the extent through which you had to go to call a race. So, you watched me call a race at Canterbury, and, I have this nice binocular pole and these field binoculars, which are used by the military that I've used all my career. And, you spin around, you put the headset on. I got the program here with a clipboard and no wind. Yeah. Emphasis on wind. So, I'm watching you do it, and I'm like, damn, it's windy. His program's blowing. He's holding this mic. He's holding this thing here, and it was so cumbersome. Yeah. Yet you got through it. You didn't complain about it. And obviously, there are things on which you would need to work to make it a career, but I was just so impressed at the fortitude and the wherewithal you had just to accomplish the task. So right here, brother.
Appreciate you, Paul.
That was
Thanks,
nice, man. Yeah.
I meeting with you this summer and going up to Canterbury, watching you calling some races. You talked a little bit and you told me some stories about how you got into your current gig with the Vikes, current gig here at Canterbury. I really want you to take us back, Paul. Take us back to that story you told me about. You were doing recordings of racing on a little tape cassette player. Yeah. And you just walked up to the owner of the racetrack. You're like, listen to this.
I told you that story, Mr. Liebau?
Take us back to that one.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I cannot tell any story or go down any path of positivity or negativity in my life without sharing just how much of a Christian I truly am. Right. And the Bible matters a lot to me. And, there's a lot with the Bible where, people don't understand because they'll handpick certain things and they won't unpack the context. And certainly it's not like I've done that with all parts of the Bible. But over the last 5 years, when it comes to whom much is given, much is expected, turn the other cheek, love one another, just some basic edicts of life have really opened my eyes to the course of my life through 57 years. And really to have this career with which God has blessed me, having not gone to college, absolutely lived a, at times deplorable life in the 90s as I was traveling around the country, just starting things. And it's not like I don't sin now, I do, but sadly, there were just some things that were out of control in my life in the 20s and the 30s. So that's the only way I can frame up stories, because the jobs are such blessings, serving people like you, those who take time to listen to what I do and recognizing I'm a conduit to help them get out of the just give them a diversion or a distraction from whatever's going on in their lives, whether it's good or bad. So all the glory for everything that I have in my career goes to God. And so that's first and foremost. So now we go back to 1989, and I'm 22 years old. I'm writing for the Pasadena Star-News. I went to Pasadena City College. I was editor-in-chief of the school newspaper. I worked with the drama team, and I had an on-campus radio show on KPCC on a big band station called the Big Band Boom. So that started it. So then I went to the Pasadena Star-News. I was covering high school sports, and the California Angels every so often. I'd get a little side Lakers thing every so often, or LA Clippers when they played at the sports arena right by USC. All right, so now I'm in. So now I'm in the newspaper business. And school just never really hit me. I mean, if honestly, if my mom hadn't either done or really helped me immensely with all of my schoolwork as a senior, I might not have graduated.
Really?
Yeah. So the schooling part of it and what went into that at that part of my life just never really hit me at all, and I was just never really sharp with it. So then from there, writing for the Pasadena Star-News, I liked horse racing, and I got horse racing, and I know there are 8 furlongs in a mile, and I know 3/4 of a mile is 6 furlongs, and, turf and dirt and stuff like that. So then I got into that. So that got me out to the racetracks. So then what I did there was I started, Trevor Denman, he still calls races at Del Mar.
Oh, yeah.
He's, for my taste, the greatest racetrack announcer in the history of this game. And that's with all due respect to Tom Durkin, who, like calling NFL games, you have Wayne Larrivee, who calls for the Green Bay Packers. And his big staple call is, "And there is your dagger." Wayne's very theatrical and very dramatic with his big, beautiful baritone voice. Well, that's Tom Durkin in this game. Now, Trevor Denman, the South African, I'm like 20, 21, 22, 23 on the grandstand of Santa Anita, and I'm hearing this, and away they go.
Yeah.
And now here comes Satchmo. And they'd need to sprout wings to catch this one. And I'm like, hey, so that bit me hard. So I wanted to do it. So I went to the roofs in the grandstands of Santa Anita, Hollywood Park, Del Mar, Fairplex, out Pomona way, and like you in the Chippewa Downs, and this is what really hit me, man, is like I constructed a coat hanger with a microphone here and a tape recorder and a program. And I put about 250, 300 races on tape, and went up to Trevor Denman and said, "Will you listen to this?" We became friends, and he listened to it, and he guided me to a spot where I felt comfortable enough when they were auditioning announcers at Bay Meadows Racecourse in San Francisco area. It's no longer there, but nevertheless, I jumped in what I called the Sanford and Son Mobile, the big red truck, and from L.A. area up to San Francisco. I'm from Washington, D.C., lived all over the world through divorce and stuff like that, but I was in Los Angeles at that time.
Okay.
And I asked the president of the track, Jack Liebau, if I could audition. Well, I mean, it's a formal process here.
Yeah.
They got like 25 to 30 who made their careers calling races, and they're auditioning. And he said, "You got no experience." He knew who I was because he lived in San Marino, California. So he knew who I was through the Pasadena Star-News and the horse racing section. So that kind of helped. But he said no. So then I got in touch with my mom, and God rest her soul, and told her about the deal and said, "I want to stay over another day because I want to go back and do it again." So she said, "Cool." So I went back the next day, and I found Mr. Liebau, Jack Liebau, and I just hit play on the tape recorder, put it, and he smiled, and he listened to a little of it, and then he kind of he went, "Oh, hey." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "All right." I think he liked the intuitive, the intrepid nature, or the tenacity, or the stick-to-itiveness. So he said, "All right, you got the 8th today." Whoa, hey.
Live race.
So I ran back out to the Sanford and Son Mobile, dusted off the binoculars, nervous as bleep, and went up there and prayed before the race, and did it. And it wasn't awful. And but the thing is even at that stage of my life, which would have been 1993, So then I'm 27-ish or whatever. My voice wasn't, as strong or as deep then as it is now, but God gifted me with projection and enunciation and articulation through the drama class part at Pasadena City College. One of the greatest things anybody ever taught me in my life when it comes to professionally was Dr. Tony Georgelis, my drama teacher at Pasadena City College. God rest his soul. He gave me a wine cork, and I don't tell this to too many people because the few I have told over the last year and change, emerging broadcasters, I just didn't think they took it seriously and they didn't follow through with it. And I think it's an unbelievable separator tool that to this day, into the Kansas City Chiefs game, off the Carolina Panthers game, off a season of calling races at Canterbury, 30-ish years into a bunch of different careers, the cork trick separates me with articulation and enunciation. And here's what it was: is you take a wine cork, you put it partway in your mouth, and then you bite it, and then you read. So I read 2 paragraphs. So it's like, Dallas Hansen came in from Crosby, and we're doing a podcast. Then you take it out. Dallas Hansen came in from Crosby, and we're doing a podcast.
Perfect.
I mean, I did it thousands of times over 5 years, and it strengthened and changed the muscles around my mouth.
Yeah.
Like Tony said they would. So the English language and the spoken word and articulation and not being lazy with speech and speaking, this gift God gave us, is very, very important to me. I don't believe it's important to a lot of people who are in broadcasting now because I can hear it and I can see it. So Mr. Liebau, he, because I had done that now for about 4 years, so my articulation and my projection jumped out to him. Mm-hmm. So he liked it, and he said, cool, we're going to whittle this thing down, but I'll tell you right now, we'd like you to come back next week. Hey! So I came back the next week. Well, they had whittled it down from high 20s to 3.
Oh, wow.
And so now they got a 9-race card at the Bay Meadows Fair in San Mateo, and I'm getting 3. And a couple others are getting 3. I can't even remember who they were. And before that, Mr. Liebau, we had us individually go to his office to talk about it, and I was first. And again, I'd never called I've never been a racetrack announcer in my life, but I got this little tape that Mr. Liebau liked. Yeah. And he said, well, what if you get the job, what do you need to make? And I said, well, what does it pay? And he said, $225 a day. And I said, I'll do it for $125 a day. And he smiled and said, get the F out of here and go call your races. So then I called 3 races and I won the job. And he gave me $275 a day. So,
wow.
So now I move up to Northern California. Well, then simulcasting starts, teleracing, where you can watch races around the world. Mm-hmm. Canterbury Park had closed from the Downs in 94 or whatever. And they're going to open in 95. And so they liked what they heard, and so they brought me here. So now for 5 years, I'm calling races south of San Francisco for 6.5 months, and jumping in the Sanford and Sunmobile and coming to Shakopee for 3.5 months. And then in the middle, I would stop at Grand Island, Nebraska at Fauner Park and fill in for Chris Katulak, who had to go to Louisiana Downs. So I did that for like a month and a half. So kind of got my gypsy thing going
awesome,
now. Yeah, it was cool and everything. I was broke every day. I mean, it's in your mid 30s doing that, just starting your career, single. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of fun times with it, but a lot of it was just so many false promises and so much false truth to what life really was like. But nevertheless, I settled in at Canterbury. Well, so what's God do next? It's 1997. KFan Radio, AM 1130 KFan, is doing every Saturday shows at Canterbury, and Doug Westerman, the program director, said, does your announcer know anything about sports? So they Canterbury put me in touch with them. I'm like, yeah, I do. I mean, probably not like your guys, but so then they would start to have me on Saturdays. Whoa. And they liked it. So then what's next? A guy named Eric Webster was doing sports updates for the Fan, and he's off for 2 weeks. Would you like to come in and do updates? So God's putting this thing together now with nothing but grace from days gone by. Seriously. So now I get in there to AM 1130 KFAN, and I don't know how to do an update. I've never done any radio in my life. So I did it in a way that was probably a little risky, but they loved it. And, I would say and I don't necessarily speak this way now, but fan travelers forecast in Amsterdam, it's 69 and smoky. Chad and Barrero coming up next on KFAN.
Yeah.
I would do things like that. The Wimbledon was going on. So blah, blah, blah. Dallas Hansen scored 40, and the San Antonio Spurs have won the NBA title. Tennis to the fuzzy ball circuit. So I just pushed the envelope with just stupid, cheap humor. But K-Fan liked somebody rolling in willing to take a chance. Mm-hmm. Well, then K-Fan and Canterbury got together and said, let's bring Paul back. So the Gypsy Trail was done in 98. And then I'm working at Canterbury and K-Fan. And then in 2000, here's what God does next. WCCO Radio, part of the CBS family, carried the Minnesota Vikings. And there were a lot of people around the world who wanted to hear Vikings football, and the internet had just popped.
Yep.
So at Vikings.com, well, CBS, the parent company for CCO, said we don't do that. So the Vikings came to KFAN and said, we need somebody to do internet broadcasts. And so then Greg Swedberg, one of my bosses still at KFAN, it was me and about 10 others, and he told us the information. We had a staff meeting, and he said, who wants to do the play-by-play? And I said, me. God raised my hand, and I'd never done it in my life. I mean, I'd called those races into tape. I'd never called a game in my life. Me. So 2000 Vikings, myself, and the superstar Mike Morris, former long snapper for the Vikes.
Yeah.
We would be in the baseball press box at Metrodome. We would be in suites on the road. We would call games off TV, and we did what was known as the Cybercast. So now I got a tape.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Vikings are done with CCO at the end of that season. Well, now they have a tape. They like me. I have a radio show. They recognize from a marketing standpoint how that can help them. I'm driving back from the state fair, 2001, to my house. And a vice president calls me and says, don't go crazy or anything. There's still one dot that needs to be hit, but we're going to give you the job. I mean, I cried in my car. Thank you, Father. Are you kidding me? Well, 10 minutes. Excuse me. I got beat for the job when I went for it by a guy named Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, who was doing San Diego Chargers and USC football. He beat me for the job. But he got fired 2 games into it. The local chapter of the NAACP here in the Twin Cities had found some stuff on his radio show from within the last year where, I mean, things he said about Lawrence Phillips and Hideki Arabu in this day and age would be beyond cancelability. Mm-hmm. They were just vulgar and they were just cheap. And it wasn't like on the fuzzy ball circuit. It wasn't dumb like that.
Right.
So he's out. And so 2 days before a preseason game against the Steelers, and I'd never called a game except for those Cybercast games, which count. The Vikings said, we need you to call this preseason game. So I did. And then they told me on that fair drive, we're going to give you the job. And man, I was emotional. Well, 15 minutes later, same vice president calls and says, hold your horses. No pun intended here at Canterbury Park. The owner, Red McComb, God rest his soul, said, why am I going to let you guys hire the next announcer when you just basically embarrassed the entire organization with the previous one you hired? So he decided to go with his best friend's son, a guy named Terry Stembridge, who I think was doing Austin P baseball and, G League basketball. And so Terry said, I'm out. And now I'm doing Fan Line and the pregame show and my regular AM 1130 KFAN show. And Terry's okay. I mean, he wasn't that good. He just wasn't that good. Yeah. But the key here and the application is not at one point during the course of his run did I rip him on my radio show and be like, this guy sucks. I should have gotten the job. I know I'm better. I did, but I never said it. I never said it to anybody. Well, that meant a lot to a lot of people at KFAN and with the Vikings. So Terry was out after his first year. Then in 2002, same vice president, we're going to give you the job. And this time you're in the winner's circle. We're getting our pictures taken. and that's it. So that's how I got that job. That's how I got all the jobs. And that's when I started doing Vikings football. After the 2003 season, I'm very raw, very, very raw, very wild, very emotional, even more so than today. Into the 03 season, we're playing the Arizona Cardinals. If we win, right, we go to the playoffs. If we don't, Green Bay does. And Josh McCown on 4th and 26 hit Nathan Poole back right of the end zone. And I screamed, no, the Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. That's before social media and stuff like that. But somehow it spread like wildfire. People just dug it.
Yeah.
Well, the owner of the team, Red McCombs, did not dig it. So I had to kind of sweat between 0 and 3, whether I was going to get the job, between 3 and 4, whether I was going to keep the job. And I kept it. So to put the story to bed and tie the common thread back to the man who gave me my first opportunity, President Jack Liebau, president at Santa Anita at that time, I sent him a letter and said that I got this job. And I would not have this job if you did not give me an opportunity and believe in me in your heart and give me the chance at Bay Meadows and stick with me after 93, where I was awful and I was trying to be Trevor Denman and I had no style. So thank you. I love you. And off we go.
So what happened?
What do you mean? I caught word that he got the letter and he was touched by it, very touched by it. Might have sent me one back. But that's the bit, man. I mean,
wow.
that's so when I say, like, I've always been a person who believed in God. I always prayed the Lord's Prayer, Our Father art in heaven, so on. Yeah. And I always was like the kid, teenager, and guy who talked to God, like, thank you for this beautiful day. Yeah. Out on Newport, Huntington Beach, whatever. Thank you, Father. I always was that guy. Yeah. But until age 52, when I went to my first Protestant sermon at a Baptist church, and they were doing a series called All Sides of the Savior, The Burden of Unforgiveness. Until I learned the significance of Christ in the Bible, I knew about Jesus Christ and I believed in him, but I didn't know exactly, as the Bible teaches, what the cross meant, what the resurrection meant, and the whole Godhead, Holy Spirit, Jesus, and God. So when that effectual calling took place in my life, 5 years ago, well, that changed everything. And I mean, that just changed absolutely everything with the now. But me looking back at the prayer of Father, please keep me within your bubble of love. And if things don't go right, I'm going to love you more tomorrow. I mean, that's like how I prayed then. Yeah. But I had no attachment to Jesus at all. And, I'm not saying there's like a dove floating in front of me now. Right. But in studying, reading, unpacking the metaphor, symbolism, and understanding the Bible to the best of my ability, and taking classes and stuff like that, I look back now at so many things that are so vivid. I almost want to say there's almost zero chance anybody the rest of the world constructs 3 jobs like this with no college experience, auditioning for all of them and winning all of them and holding all of them. So that's grace in my life. That's grace from God to build the following, create the speaking skills for what my life is about now, organically sharing the gospel, which is in the New Testament of Jesus Christ, whenever I get the opportunity. So that's kind of my whole life in
awesome,
nutshell,
man.
right there, brother.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
for sure.
That. Who was the starting quarterback? Was it Dante Culpepper?
It was Dante. Yep, 2002. My very first regular season game I called was at where University of Illinois plays, Champaign, because Soldier Field was being renovated. Okay. And in that game, Jim Miller, who does a radio show for Sirius Satellite Radio, I call him Bubble Screen. I go on a show every so often with Pat Kerwin because he just threw a million bubble screens, and he was the quarterback that day, and they beat us in overtime with a laser from Miller, back center of the end zone, to former Michigan receiver David Durrell. But during the course of that game, like I said, when I was wild, I was just more wild and more emotionally out of control in the game. It's the only way to put it. That there was one play where we had a defensive end named Talan Sawyer, tightly contested game. And Mike Tice is the coach, and I had known Mike for 5 to 10 previous years through horse racing. So I was kind of in with Mike and the team.
Mike was in on horse racing?
Mike and Mike Pegram, who owns horses for Bob Baffert.
Oh, wow.
And Gary Stevens. They're all that whole Washington group, man. They're just really, really tight.
Yeah.
And I know them all. Scott Stevens, Hall of Famer here at Canterbury. I've been calling Scott's races for years. So, Mike really, really welcomed me in as a newbie. But on that call with DeLance Sawyer, he caused a fumble, and I jumped up out of my chair, and I pulled all the cords out of the headphones, mic, everything. And, the analyst, Joe Sensor, was laughing so hard because, I'm God's cartoon character to a certain extent. It's like a gift of mine, but I'm a cartoon character overall at times because of moments like that. And Joe's laughing. He's seeing the cartoon character just flustered.
Yeah.
And the producer on site there, Doug Westerman at Champagne, looked at Joe and yelled, "Talk!" And then Joe had to, because all my stuff was out.
Unplugged.
Dan Robotham, the engineer, came back, plugged everything in. So that was game number 1, man. And we lost in overtime, and it was 115 on the heat index. And, I was like, hey, okay, here we go.
One of the best plays I've ever seen from that era was when Dante threw it deep to Randy Moss. Randy Moss caught it. He's being tackled over his shoulder. Was that to Ontario?
It was to Mo Williams in a game against the Broncos.
Yeah.
And it was right before half. And, it's when I have the respect and the belief in God's will guiding all, and there is free will, but free will brings the potential of bad or evil or sin. I look at so many different things in my career, and I'm just very thankful that God permitted the words to come out the way they did.
Yeah.
Because I don't script lines ever. Like Minneapolis Miracle and
that was one of the greatest.
And just Greg Lewis, all that stuff. No, I don't script any of that. I do it with what God gave me. And on that very play you brought up, it was the day of the Academy Awards. It was the Sunday of the Academy Awards. I had that on my mind. Yeah. And when Moss threw it over his back, no look pass to Mo Williams touchdown, I'm like, that Randy Moss, something would win an Academy Award. So that hit, and it was timely, and that was just a precursor for what has ended up being a fair amount of things like that during the course of 22 years calling Vikings football.
One of the plays that comes to my mind that's my favorite one that you've ever called is the Brett Favre to Greg Lewis back of the end zone against the Niners.
That was fun.
I was a younger kid, and I was watching my grandma and grandpa's. I like the Vikings. My dad's a big Vikings fan. Mm-hmm. But when he threw that and we had it playing in the radio, dude, you were like, it's Greg Lewis. Yeah. Greg Lewis. Yeah. It's pretty sure
it was the first play he played on the team. He'd only been there a week. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that I knew he was in the game because I saw him come in. Yeah.
I was just going to say, when he's a newer player like that, do you automatically mark him, or you're like, okay, Greg?
Well, no, because a fair amount of the technical aspect and the A to B to C to D of broadcasting is gone in moments like that. I mean, now it's like it's binoculars, microphone, mouth, mind, and heart. Yeah. And you just do it. And so the fact that I was able to get Greg Lewis was beautiful. And I, a lot of people will ask me, do you have a favorite call or a favorite game and stuff like that? And I think that is my favorite individual call I've ever made in my career. Yeah. For a lot of those reasons that we said. And having Brett Favre on the team that year was, it was the good thing is he's so iconic and was so good and the season was so much fun. 2009, I'll never forget it. The bad part is, with all due respect to everybody, a quarterback who's playing or has played with this team, because people get touchy. Yeah. When I saw Brett in practice and play the game, I'm like, wow. This is how it's supposed to be done. Yeah, yeah. And you just don't see it like that frequently enough. Right. The gift and the moxie and the envelope pushing. Now, the envelope pushing threw it to Tracy Porter at the end of the NFC title game.
Detroit.
There was that side too. Yep. But Brett was amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
Was that and I hate to bring this up, but was that the most heartbreaking loss in your Vikings history?
Not even close. There's a difference between the most fun in a game at the end that I've ever had and the most memorable. The most fun would be when Keenum hit Diggs and the Utah rookie safety, Marcus Williams, freaked out and jumped too early.
Right.
And God puts me on, it's a 61-yard Minneapolis Miracle, which is stuck in the minds of a lot. There were Dallas Hansons and Billies and Johnnies and Christies and Susie so excited they were trying to climb into the Vox box, the announcer's booth, to high five and hug. So that was surreal. But the 2009 NFC Championship game, the Superdome was never not loud. Never. Right. It was fever pitch from the boom to Hartley daggering us. And Bursich and I were out of our seats pretty much the whole game, calling the game. And then the way it ended, we run up like 525 yards of offense. We're just kicking the bleep out of them, but we give it away 5 times. And, God, just even thinking about it now. And then the only time I've cried after a game was that game where, I didn't really have a lot of conversations with Brett Favre during the course of the year. I'd say maybe an hour complete of just talking to each other on buses or whatever the whole year. He was just, he's like really the only one that I've ever been around where I was like a little nervous, like a fan. Yeah. Because I just had so much reverence for the way he played the game. Right. Well, I had just seen Brett, Percy Harvin, Sidney Rice, and Adrian Peterson. See, these kids, Adrian's in his 3rd year. Percy's a rookie. Sidney's in his 2nd year. These kids looked up to Brett like dad, like boss, and like unbelievable football player we watched when we were kids. I mean, they loved him. And that's so key to having something like that, to like your team, the Chiefs. Mahomes is 7th year or whatever, but he's still relatively young. But, when these kids are drafted and they come in there like, wait, whoa, Patrick, Chris Jones, Travis, you need that. You need ancillary players on teams to look up to others on the team so much so they don't want to let them down. Right. And that's what it was like with those kids and Brett. So I mustered up the courage to go up to Brett when they were done, and they were weeping. They weren't sobbing. It's not like shoulders up and down, but they were crying. And I looked at him and I said, in my whatever years calling Minnesota Vikings football, you are the greatest football player I've ever seen in my life, and it's not close, with all due respect to Randy. And I really hope you come back next year. And he embraced me, man, tightly. And my shoulder, I was like, like that. Really? It's the only time I've cried after a game. I'll never forget that moment. That's by far the most memorable professional day experience I've ever had in my life. And I still see it so vividly. Dude, that was intense. That got me. I don't tell that story too often. I appreciate you sharing that. That was awesome. Just looking back at Brett, and now let's fast forward a little bit here to today's Vikings. Little bit of a rough start this year after last year having a fantastic year. Get it back on track. I think we're going to beat your team too, by the way. But we'll talk about that in a minute. In Week 5 games, I think it's been 25 years, the Vikings have never lost a Week 5 game. What? Yeah. Where's my game calling depth chart? Damn, man, are you sure? Yeah, 100%. Hey. I just saw it on Twitter. I'll send you the tweet afterwards. Mahomes, I'll get to it in a minute. Go ahead. Yeah, but anyways, the Vikings have been fortunate to have great wide receivers like Randy Moss. Even Sidney Rice in those Brett Favre years. Percy Harvin was fantastic. Now we're moving on to he's JJ. One of the best in the league, if not the greatest player that we've seen in a long time. With the Vikings getting these types of players, what do you see kind of the future happening with them specifically this year? This year, there needs to be a rally and there can be a rally. And this is not being, Homer announcer guy. It's just anybody who's watched our first 4 games knows if we don't drop it and give it up via fumble against Tampa Bay, they're not beating us. Right. And then we go to Philadelphia and we ain't looking great, but then we catch fire. Yep. And then JJ has that pylon thing, pylon thing where now it's like, what? Yeah. That's not a touchdown? Oh, and Philadelphia gets it? Oh, that's really cool. but I think we were going to beat them. Now, Bill Parcells once said, it's people have said it a million times. You are what your record is. So he's right. Stop dropping the ball. Don't have 7 lost fumbles. Don't let Devontae Smith get behind you on Thursday night. So all of that plays into it too. But the key with this team now is that what I saw in the Carolina game, and Carolina and Kansas City are polar opposites.
Right.
Bryce Young and Mahomes at this stage, polar opposites.
Yes, 100%.
Is Marcus Davenport returned, and they finally had the linebackers in this defense are the most key of anything. That's my belief, at least. And they had all 4, and it confused Young in a way that I can't remember the last time I've seen a quarterback that confused during a game. So the Brian Flores defense, like the Steve Spagnuolo defense, and I taped an interview with Kevin O'Connell this Friday, for our pregame show, and one of my questions was, Spag's defense is a lot like Flores, isn't it? And he said, you're right, astute observation, but so it's like it's in the same fishbowl, just under different rocks, but it's hard to learn, very hard to learn. Flores defense, Spagnuolo's defense. Well, now we're 4 games into after organized team activities, training camp, preseason. It's starting to click with some of them. It's like if they were at a 65% for quick twitch memorization, well, now they're at 80. And now Brian's gaining the confidence, I can tell, to unfurl the prime plays. And we saw them in the Carolina game. Harrison Smith's 3 sacks. I mean, you can look at the all 22. You didn't see that one time.
Harry Hitman.
You didn't see Hitman line up in that spot one time and do what he did.
Right.
So what's next? What's next when they line up those 4 backers with Hunter and Davenport and then Patrick Jones and Wanham in the middle?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I just really liked what I saw when I watched that thing back, even against Carolina, because I just know there are things you can do off of it.
Right.
I love this team, man.
Yeah, no, they're awesome.
Yeah, these 2 Kevin O'Connell teams, man. I like Kevin a lot, man. I just really, really I would really love to see Kevin win a Super Bowl here.
Being in the, which is like we were talking about earlier, the Taj Mahal of training facilities, what the Vikings have here in Minneapolis. I got to go interview Coach Dalman Gibson, who you know.
Yeah, assistant special teams.
One thing he said in our podcast, right? Assistant special teams.
Works with Matt Daniels, man.
Yep. One thing he really said, guys like Keenan McCardell, Coach Kevin, it's a very tight-knit group.
Yep, Mike Patton.
Dalman's been through like 7-8 teams in college.
Wow.
He said, in my 7-8 teams, I've never had a tight-knit group like this.
Wow.
And they're just...
Well, I noticed that last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because after Zimmer was fired, and so now I'm 20, 21 years into my career. I'm like, at this age with it's having my hand in the chapel here at Canterbury Park, which we minister to the backsiders and those who are really, really in need traveling around the country as grooms and stuff like that. So like with that emerging, and I'm speaking a lot more to groups about faith or about my career, I'm just going to take a step back now. This gives me an opportunity to take a step back. I don't necessarily need to be in Zimmer's office or the coach's office, kicking my feet up on the desk metaphorically and being told what's going to, here's how I think we're going to beat the Saints in the playoff game with Everson and Daniil. I'm just going to back off of it and take a step back here and see where God takes that. And I did. And I had a bunch of my dear media relations friends, including Spearfish Sammy Newton. I just love him, man. They have a great media relations team with the Vikings. Just wondering, where's Paul? He's not coming out to practice as much, stuff like that. Well, then I told him, I'm taking a step back just to maybe take 2 steps forward. Mm-hmm. Well, after we beat the Buffalo Bills last year, I couldn't get enough of it. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty much at every practice. I was so hype on the team and the spirit that had come in the building, the positive, happy, loving, wonderful, non-backbiting spirit that came in the building. But being old school, I also realized, we're 8-2. I mean, it's easier to have this whole thing,
right,
when everything's hunky-dory. But what really impressed me about O'Connell and his staff last year is when we would lose, I mean, we just got killed, whether it was Dallas, Philadelphia, or whatever. And the coaches stayed the course, at least the ones, with whom I would work. They were still even keeled. Mm-hmm. They didn't go from, yes, this is awesome and fun, to big a-hole guy for the entire week, and now it's tough to do my job. So that impressed me, and I couldn't get enough of it. Then we get bounced. Then into this season, super excited. Out there, not as much as I used to be, but still get out there enough, and get an opportunity on road games to sit in Kevin's hotel room for about 15, 20 minutes to tape that pregame interview. And the cool thing about that is for 10 or 15 of the minutes, talking to him about the game.
Right.
But in a different way, I used to talk to Zim or Leslie or Childress or Tice, like, Dalton Reisner, the K-State offensive lineman. It's if you believe the Vikings have had problems on their offensive line, and then Reisner comes in, well, working the K-Fan show, I hear a lot of and wonder myself, okay, when's Reisner in? So, like, a key here is when I sit down with Kevin, not knowing the answer of what the line's going to be in the Panthers game. You don't come into it going like, all right, who's out? Ezra, Ingram, who's in? Reisner? Nah, you don't do it like that. It's like, any changes to like anything, your line the same this week, and that gets you into the conversation,
right.
And then he'll kind of share how few things he thinks need to happen to win the game, and I mentally will keep that for the game. So if it's happening, then I can share with Bursich, O'Connell said to me yesterday, blah, 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 and boom, there it is.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how that whole professional circle of trust and stuff like that works, and trust, and not having to be the one to have the right answer, and not talking over people, and just listening to these coaches who, like your friend, who have put so much time into it. That leads to give and take and a family type feel they have that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know you got to get out of here.
We're good. No, it's fun. Keep going.
We got 2 little segments left that I like to do. Okay. This is called 10 for 10.
Yeah.
So now
you came down from Crosby, man. I ain't going to run you over to that blackjack table excuse me, I'm sorry. I ain't going to run you out of here.
It's all good. So 10 for 10, Paul, is it's like random questions, but answer them as quick as you can. Okay. So number 1, and away we go. Cat or dog?
Cat.
Hot dog or hamburger?
Hot dog.
Palm trees or evergreen trees?
Palm.
Lake or ocean?
Ocean, not even close. No, not even. I'm just not. I mean, the non-Minnesotan in me.
Right.
I'm not going to say all lakes are icky and gross.
Right.
But I mean, when I spent 15 years in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I love oceans, man, and I love waves and salt water. And it's like some of the things I put my feet on in lakes, and just some of the smells and everything. I'm like, yeah.
Favorite actor?
Wow. How long do I have for this? I would say. That's a wonderful question. Russell Crowe.
Favorite band?
Daryl Hall and John Oates.
What city in Texas has an NBA mascot nicknamed the Mavericks?
Dallas.
What city in Texas has an NFL team nicknamed the Cowboys?
Dallas.
What city in Texas spelled backwards reads salad?
Dallas.
Who is your favorite podcaster / protege?
Dallas Hansen at Chippewa Downs.
Well, to close here,
that was sweet.
Yeah, man. To close here, every question I ask my guest is what Swim Lessons is about, and it's kind of like overcoming the tough times. What's something that Paul Allen tells himself when he's kind of up against it? And obviously, you can't be a happily bubbly guy. Yeah. All the time. So what do you do?
No, I'm not.
What do you do to kind of overcome some obstacles in your life that you always do?
I believe in the Bible. I pray. And when I pray, I don't go to praying like, Father, give me this job. Father, give me that. No, I pray to God's will. And there's a reason the only place in the Bible you will find a blueprint for prayer is in the Gospel of Matthew, when disciple Peter asked Jesus, teach us to pray. And he said, thought you'd never ask. Our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. So doing my best to live thy, not I, recognizing God's will supersedes everything. And if there's something bad in my life, and there's been a fair amount, I'm never going to stop loving God, and I'm never going to stop not believing. I'm not going to stop believing in Jesus and recognizing the Holy Spirit even guides moments like this. So therefore, when you have that as your baseline, it's organic and it's not by obligation. I'm not a works-based Christian when it comes to getting to heaven. That's the baseline. The cross is the ultimate in suffering a man can take in the history of the world. So I can call on that too. And I can just recognize I don't have to have the answer, but I do have to have hope. So I don't have the answer for why the Academy Awards bit or Minneapolis Miracle or when I blew a Greg Joseph call a couple of years ago down Phoenix way. I don't, what's the purpose here? I don't know, but I'm never going to stop loving. And that, just organically and naturally and through the Holy Spirit keeps me at peace.
Yeah.
Keeps me at peace through COVID hits, and COVID sucked, man.
Oh.
And it's like, but I was at peace. I was at peace the whole time, despite 401k and just kids are now doing stuff online. And, my daughter's a junior in high school and hates it, or a senior. And it's awful. It's ruining her senior year, her final year. And, I said to those with whom I live, including my children, Derek and Nicole, I said, well, whether you're an atheist or a Christian, okay, no matter where you come from with your beliefs, all right, atheist being I don't believe in God, Christ, or the Holy Spirit. Both, I think it's fair to recognize, everybody can recognize at that time, the very beginning of COVID and the quarantine, the vain have had their mirrors shattered. The greedy are twisting and turning or relegated to giving, and the hedonistic have either stopped or slowed down. So how do you get there? So one group will get there one way and I will get there another way. And so I share that with my family. And so I think that's just pretty much the answer,
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate
What about the Chiefs, bro?
Oh, I think they're going to, we'll see. When this comes
let
out,
me share a couple. Let me share a couple. Oh, is it after the game?
Yeah.
Okay, well, into the game, this Saturday before the game
If my laptop dies, just
with Dallas Hansen, I do think the Vikings have an excellent chance to win this game.
They do.
Mahomes' yards per attempt is the lowest of his career, and Kelsey's yards per catch is the lowest of his career. We're 4 games into it. We're happy for you. But catching the champs, your squad, now at this stage of the season compared to December or January.
Yeah.
And the Vikings can move the ball up and down the field. Nice offense, defense coming together. Can't wait for the game.
I can't wait to see you. I'm going to be there. I'm row 2 right behind the Chiefs, so I'll try to.
Of course you are.
And then maybe.
Of course, you're wearing a game-worn Karlaftis.
George,
George Karlaftis is underrated. He's underrated. He's nice.
Let's do this again sometime.
Got you, brother.
I appreciate PA.
Thanks for listening to my story, man.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. And that's a wrap. Paul Allen, everybody.